after I'd finished running, it was late. I don't know if it was midnight or if it was early in the morning, but it was late, and the moon was shining. My tears were flowing. I didn't know where all the other disciples had gone, and so I did what I could only think I could do at that moment. I snuck back into the city to try to find out where Jesus was. And they had taken him to Annas' house, who was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest. But I didn't know what they were going to do. Why did they take him? Why was Judas betraying him? So I followed from a distance, and I even tried to cover my head. And it was cold, and I was trying to keep people from knowing who I was because I didn't know if they saw me, they would know me as one of his disciples. Because it was late and because it was cold, I found a fire. There was a couple of guards that were warming their hands, and so I went up next to them, and I approached, and I put my hands near, and a young girl slowly approached. And she looked at me, and she turned her head, and she saw my eyes, and she said, "You also were a Nazarene. You were with Jesus." And of course, I immediately said, "No, I don't know him. What are you talking about?" And I quickly left. Tried to find another place to hide, but she followed me, and she came up to me, and she goes, "No, you were one of those Nazarenes. You were with him." And I said, "No, it's not me. You're mistaken." I was afraid. They might arrest me, like I didn't know what to do, but then others began to join her, and they were pointing at me, and they were saying, "Yeah, you're Cephas, or you're Simon," and they knew me. And I cursed at them. I cursed at them all. I said, "You don't know me. I wasn't with him. I don't know that man." And it was in that moment, a rooster crowed. And I realized that I had done the very thing that Jesus said that I would do. I denied him 3 times. I was in the courtyard, and Jesus was coming out. And it was just at that same moment, and tears are coming down my eyes, and Jesus looks right at me with those same fierce eyes, but just loving. And I was so ashamed. Tears down my face because I had denied my Lord. I don't know what happened after that. They took him away, and they took him to a trial, and the events that preceded were horrible that morning, early in the morning. Why were people even awake? It was a huge crowd, and Jesus was whipped, and he was brought before Pilate, and his back, the blood. They made him carry the cross down the Via Dolorosa all the way to the skull mountain called Golgotha. The crowds, they asked for another man, a man named Barabbas, who was a murderer, to be released, and they said, "Crucify Jesus, crucify him." It just doesn't make any sense. I can't understand it. They took him to the cross, and they nailed his hands and his feet. Cursed is the man who hangs on a tree. Jesus became a curse. It was 9 a.m. and it was dark. The sun was not shining. It was the darkest day of my life. It was the darkest day of history. And there he was, hanging on a tree to die, trying to breathe because he would have to push himself up. I heard that he even said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And he cried out, "Tetelestai," which means it is finished, paid in full. What did he pay? What was he paying? The earth shook. It was an earthquake, and it went very dark, and it was in that moment that he hung his head and breathed his last. Jesus died on that cross. They took the bodies down, for it was Sabbath, about to be Sabbath, and Joseph of Arimathea asked for the body, and he placed Jesus' body in his tomb in a garden. They had killed the Messiah. They had killed the King of the Jews. everything that I thought was going to happen was crumbling down all around me. What am I going to do now? I thought everything I believed was going to happen just stopped. And they rolled the stone in front of the tomb. And it was over. That was the end.